of chicken egg story, and a lot of opinions was heard. What has a primary value, and is it possible to imagine cinematography without technology, or technology without cinematography? And it seems like we're lucky bunch of fellows.
Joe,
Who is
we're waiting for you.
who believes that there is no
It's
conflict between those two axes, and basically, especially nowadays, when so many technological developments are showing the results which was never seen before in the entire history of cinematography. Because normally in analog times, cinematographer was able to enjoy the images from original negative, and sometimes only on a big festival, cinematographer was able to see for the first time on a huge screen the image which was created carefully within a long period of time. And then in the film theaters, it was like a very weak copies went through the intermediate, and nowadays cinematographers cannot see the image on the set in a quality which the audience will watch it later on, and many other topics. And today we will introduce IMAGO Technical Committee once more, probably for those people who never heard about it. And we are a group of colleagues which, thanks to the pandemic lockdown, became friends, and we're sharing the same values, same understanding. We believe and we're taking care about something what we love the most after our families is cinematography. And at this particular moment, it's 4 co-chairs, because basically all of us is quite busy with other topics in our life. And this is the way we first, we have the biggest geographical coverage, because within the last couple of years, IMAGO was surviving transformation from European to international federation. Now it's more than 50 national associations is in IMAGO. And of course, we also having more and more members of committees, including technical committee and education and all other committees of IMAGO. And me, Alfonso Paro, cinematographer from Colombia, Philip and David, we are co-chairs. And then with 4 co-chairs, we're able to spend enough time for the topics to develop it further.
And we are waiting for 2 other co-chairs, one from Africa and one from Asia.
Yeah. So in total, we have 26 full members in the IMAGO Technical Committee, 5 associated members, 26 corporate members, 7 members are waiting for the final approval and acceptance, and 17 members is invited to participate. And it may sound a little bit bureaucratic or complicated, but this is a price of democracy to pay, and everybody has to be agreed. And so far we have fantastic new members, like recently, for instance, Fernanda Tanaka, amazing cinematographer and amazing character from Brazil. She joined us, and she will lead so-called Preservation Council, which will take care about archives, specifically can be managed by Fernanda, because as you remember, not so long time ago, the National Archive in Sao Paulo in Brazil was damaged by a huge fire, and a lot of priceless materials and then kind of part of the world heritage was lost in this fire. And Fernanda will be the key person to communicate and to coordinate the efforts of all national associations and cinematographers around the world regarding the topic of the safety and preservation technologies and safety regulations, let's say, which will hopefully stop this constant losses of the heritage of cinematography worldwide. Among the corporate members, we have companies like Engineer, Ari, Blackmagic Design, Cult Size, Cook Optics, Filmlight, Fujifilm, K5600, Kinoflow, Lights, Panasonic, Pomford, Red, Samyang Optics, Schneider Kreuznach, and Sony. And we are in a close touch with the manufacturers, which is basically part of the nature of IMAGO Technical Committee, because we believe and we're doing our best to help manufacturers to get more, let's say, correspondence with expectations and wishes of cinematographers, and at the same time to get cinematographers being lead to the position of more control of their tools. And the process of joining Canon, Panavision, Romford, Baker, Motion, Kodak, and Vita Group, and invited companies as Ambient, GMG, Lumiere, PNDS Technic, Transvideo, and Vantage. Countries represented in the ITC, you can clearly see on the screen. Make no sense for me to repeat all of those. This is the important slide because we found that aspects of professional life is requiring more attention, and also important that cinematographers, when we're communicating with manufacturers, we need to get pretty deep knowledge. And sometimes our average knowledge, which is absolutely good enough for successful performance in cinematography, is not good enough to even to understand well the messages which we're getting from manufacturers, because a lot of our members has engineering education and very deep knowledge, and we have to be able to communicate on the same language. And then we decide to establish the councils, and we have Optics Council, which is taking care about all optical instruments, including lenses, filters, and all kind of adapters. Camera Council, which is clearly doing what it has to do according to the name. Grip Council, Light Council, Film Preservation, already mentioned. Image Processing Council, which is extremely interesting, and Screening and Monitoring Council, Rental Council, and Projects Council. So basically, this at this particular moment, 9 councils is covering all the topics and subjects which is vital for cinematography, and then we doing our best to be active in this perspective.
So I'm going to speak about the goals of our, let's say, federal association. So basically, there's a lot of debate and discussions on how we cinematographer, artists, technicians, and or businessmen. I think Dave wrote in his last book that we are artists, technicians, and businessmen. In Europe, I would add that it's not so easy to say businessman, but there's a lot of cinematographers who own their own company. So things have changed recently, and we'll speak about this topic at the end because it's really the point. We are really late. Yes?
I have to interrupt you. We should be very correct. It's businessman or businesswoman. We have to...
Well, I let this part for Alexei. Me, I'm not politically correct. I'm not totally politically correct. So how do cinematography use tools? This is a real debate because I think it's related to the wish of creativity and the wish of discovering, let's say, new language. And we're putting a lot of emphasis on this. So we'll never consider technology for only for technology, but just for the aim and the final goal. So mixing sensibilities and cultures, it's really the wish that we have at the technical committee, and I've been asked to be the manager or the chairman of this committee several years ago, and I refused to be alone. And I think it's very important to mix all the different countries and different places in the world. But one single focus is to speak about creativity and to help cinematographers to give back to let's say, to give their power back in terms of this decision. The other thing is that we are trying to share the maximum of things regarding knowledge, regarding the different analysis surveys that has been made. Roberto will explain you also the relationship we have with Cine later. So we are trying to connect everybody in the world, which is a great, let's say, goal of this association federation. And we are also supporting not only cinematographers, but filmmakers, because there's a lot of filmmakers who are cinematographers nowadays. And we want to, as I said, provide more control on our tools. It means that we have nowadays fantastic tools given by engineers, but we need also to have to try to drive them to specific paths that we want. So it's a very important thing inside the committee. So we are establishing a lot of, let's say, debate with manufacturers, with and providers. So now, unfortunately, Alfonso is not here to speak about his famous camera test, but I let Dave speak about what has been done recently. Dave, you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. So Alfonso and the group have worked together on a thorough regimen for testing cameras, including contrast and latitude and noise and different sensor parameters. And these are, if I'm not mistaken, available on the IMAGO website to see, and they're available on Alfonso's website to see, along with the methodology. He has written a lovely paper on what his thinking is and how he proceeds with testing. And generally, all of the important parameters for testing a digital motion picture camera are all wrapped up into his presentation. All of us are interacting with him, and eventually we are aiming to create a uniform standard for testing cameras. I know Roberto has his methodology, which is in a lot of ways quite similar to what Alfonso does. And I have my own methodologies. And between the entire group, eventually we will come up with a document that shows the way, shows a path to test all of the parameters of a digital motion picture camera. His most intensive recent tests were on the Sony FX9, and they're very thorough, and they come to some great conclusions about the capabilities of the camera. I wish he were here to speak to us about that today, but like any good cinematographer, he's working.
So now it's Juan. Juan?
Hello. Well, the idea of the council is to share technical and artistic knowledge between manufacturers and users of optical devices. Some of the ideas are to work on the standardization of the use of terms and words in the world of optics, but focus mainly to cinematography work. Also, we will want to develop standard workflows and recommended practices to test optics and lenses in the field, and also something that you can do in rental houses, something without the major tools. Try to come up with some kind of standard methodology to do that. We would like also to try to standardize between manufacturers way to test in the same way lenses, so we can compare apples with apples, for example. And another point will be to develop recommendations and workflows for the use of lens metadata. And finally, maybe create an international database of lenses, which that's a big work, as well, to test new lenses and put the test of the lenses and optical devices in the IMAGO webpage. That is mainly the idea of the console.
And now it's time for Joe to speak. Joe, please, could you comment your slide? Joe, you're mute. Joe?
They're taking care about muting.
Joe Danton? Joe, could you hear us?
Almost feels like a regular ITC meeting, I guess.
I think he's struggling with granting access to his audio, so he's not connected to audio.
So basically, Joe wants to make a lot of tests regarding the colors because he thought that he thinks that for a large screen we are missing, let's say, chroma reference and chroma subtleties. It's a real debate, and I'm sure that, for example, our friend Daniel still not agree on that. And we have a lot of experiences made by different cinematographers, including Joe. And also, Dave, I think you're working on a six photo sites, different colors of photo sites on a new camera. So there's a lot of possibilities. And as you see, Joe wants to make a test with a 3D rig without any shift between the two cameras in order to have more information on the yellow vector, which is really important for the future. And it will be a test. It will be a way to show different mode. We have seen that depending manufacturers, we saw difference in chroma references. We cannot really speak about color space for cameras, but we have, let's say, information given by the camera which are different. Of course, it's coming from the sensors and the treatment, but we want to go further, and Joe's system is the way to go further. So now it's time for your friend, I don't see, unfortunately,
Charles Poynton.
Charles Poynton. We had some problem with Zoom links. Oh, Joe, it seems that Joe is back. Joe, you want to say something? Still not having possibility to Joe. So we have to jump. Joe is okay? Can you speak? Joe, you're mute. Well, I think we cannot hear Joe. Okay. So we have to go back to the glossary. No, it's not working for him. So Charles Poynton is a very famous color scientist, and he's working for long years with the technical committee, and he has started to work with us 3 years ago, let's say. And actually, he has been working on 3 glossaries. One is the ITC glossary. The other is a virtual production glossary, which has been launched by a bunch of companies like EVS, like Netflix, to help cinematographers and post-production manager, colorists to deal with virtual production. And there is a new glossary launched by the Rapid Industry Solution, on which we are working. I think Charles has been a full member, even if he's an associate member, he's really a full member of the technical committee, and we have been working during a full year each week to develop this glossary. But in order to, when we launched this glossary 3 years ago, it was because we knew that, especially for international co-production, a lot of problems occurred coming from the lack of semantic, let's say, harmonization. So that's why we wanted to have a kind of harmonization between all these words. And Danielle proposed us a different approach, which is a complementary approach with the photon pass. So it's your turn.
Okay, thank you. Can we get my screen onto the screen? My laptop. All right, so I think this is just a accidental delivery. When we started with the ITC meetings, and I was also involved in all of the glossary work, and you can imagine if there are 20, 30 people in a Zoom call and we're talking about really subtle things, then we often got in rounds and turns and chased our own tails because different people were talking about different things. So we started to really yeah, first very simplistic and then even more detailed to write down what are we actually talking today, and this all then grew up into a kind of a more and more complete picture of a process. And then we thought, okay, let's make something out of that because it's almost done. And also it ties the glossary nicely. It gives the pieces of information kind of structural context. So what we've done is we took that diagram and we kind of made this explorable. So this is now a website. It's like a wiki. It's not something really crazily new. But we thought as a theme, we take the photon and we basically chase it all the way from the set all the way through the camera and through the post-production process, all the way back to the eyes of the audience. And we are drawing a few boxes there where things happen and where things can be confused. And also we gave it a little bit of a color code. So the orange ones are actually the ones a cinematographer can creatively engage with, because I also know that sometimes there are some dials which are not meant to be used for creative purpose, but more for technical ones, and we're trying to encode this information as well. And I'm not going through those things with you, but it kind of gave us context where we also get this different areas. What is a sensor value? What is a pixel value? Where does scene referred start? Where does display referred start? What is the bounding box? There's a lot of debate in the industry at the moment also. And we thought putting this into a diagram is cool, and we also made this in such a way that also the glossary is directly attached to it. So that is so if we now look at spectrally selective photosites and I double click, then we see the glossary entry for that here. So it's really helping the cinematographer to really get an idea about what is going on with the signal and the data all the way until an image is formed again. And yeah, so if you look photosite, and then it goes through the sensor, then some raw processing, you see that there are some different routes, because we wanted to have a diagram where all of the camera manufacturers and post-production companies agree on, which was a challenge in itself. So we have some alternative paths, because obviously some are doing things slightly different, but all of the major camera manufacturers agreed kind of that this is on a high level thing, what they would do. And yeah, and then if we, for example, go here full to legal, which is obviously the one most frustrating part in our industry, is basically how you scale your data. And then you can get in here, and then you can further explore further information, which then Charles and the others kind of provided. And we I think it's a nice packaging, and this will be eventually also hosted under the IMAGO Technical Committee website. And you can also, there are also terms in there. If you type in, for example, color, so color gamut, for example, then you get a definition here, and what is a color space, and so on. So it's both a glossary and a wiki and some structural information about that. And so this is what I was doing the last few months, putting this all together. And then we have others that are working on some other individual pieces here to help visualize what is going on, and to give a holistic overview of the image.
Say that Harry, Red, Sony, Panavision have approved this photon pass, and we're waiting for the green light from 2 other camera manufacturers. But it's a great point for having this harmonization between all these competitors and manufacturers. You want to say something else about this? Because you've been also thinking of using this platform, which is a wiki platform. It will be interactive. Could you speak a little
so
bit more
what I'm
about
using
this?
here is actually exactly the rendering of that wiki as later you can explore when you visit that website. So it's a HTML-based wiki site, and all of the underlying information is hosted on GitHub. So you could check this out and contribute. And if you find a spelling error or you disagree, we could bring this up to a more open source platform.
Yeah, Netflix and ACES also have approved, and certainly we will add from Kodak the capture from film, which is missing for the moment, but which is not a great.
I mean, there's a lot missing. There's always a strike in complexity and understandability. Of course, every box of that you could zoom in and get another similar size diagram, and then I don't think that ends at some point. And if you look about virtual production, then you could take this whole process, and here where the display is, you put in the same diagram again, because you're filming basically a display, and then you put some stuff in front, and we can extend this, and we could add several different diagrams for different kind of topics in there as well. But it's a good start, I guess.
Okay, we have unfortunately we don't have our friend Stefan Grandinetti from the Stuttgart University. Is also a cinematographer, BVK cinematographer. Can we have the?
Could we switch back to the laptop? Yes. One?
Thank you.
Laptop one would be, yeah, perfect.
Yes, Stefan plays a great, important role, and as you know, he's working on research on HDR and HFR, but he's also working as a professor in this university, and he will provide us an application for the photon pass. For those who are familiar with the, let's say, the trailer of Camera Image, remember that we are entering and following a beam of light of the projector, and it will be the same application to enter in the photon pass in 3D, and it will be a virtual trip into the photon pass.
And also would like to add that basically the future developments, this photon pass appeared to be important tool, not only for understanding, but also for education purposes. And we will add the second level, which will be creative, when people can easily trace what kind of technical decisions impacting creative approach and how creative approach should be implemented into the technical decisions.
Okay, so now, Dave, it's your part regarding the side effects of the confusion on worlds. Dave, can you switch on the gallery, please?
Yes, I'm here. So one of the issues that we have had as a result of confusion of terms, for example, is the confusion in describing sensors in pixels. And this is one that we've worked on very hard at IMAGO in the committee and in the glossary. A photosite is an individual light-sensitive image sensor capable of converting light into an electrical signal. You can imagine it as a bucket for collecting photons. But when you examine a CMOS sensor and you see that it is a Bayer pattern sensor, there are no pixels on that sensor. There are only photosites. And pixels do not exist until after debayering. So for many years now, since we started describing digital cameras, maybe 22, 23 years ago, the manufacturing community has been using the word pixel to describe the things on their sensors, which are actually photosites. So when they say, 8, 10, 12 megapixel, however many megapixel sensor, what they really should be saying is how many megaphotosites, because the relationship between photosites and pixels is rarely, if ever, 1-to-1. And it's usually more photosites than pixels because there is a debayering factor that reduces resolution by averaging when you go from photo sites and you debayer to pixels. And this is just one instance of the confusion in terminology that has been perpetuated for years and which doesn't have enough accuracy for us to describe what happens in our cameras. Okay.
Yeah, you want to speak about your work on metadata, please, Dave?
Okay. One of the other areas that I've been involved in is metadata. Metadata for all aspects of cameras, but especially lately, I've been doing workflow tests, employing metadata from lenses, and am currently working to prepare a film called Comandante for Italy. And in that workflow, we began by assuming that we were going to shoot against an LED wall, but we also began by assuming we were going to shoot with anamorphic lenses, which are notoriously the most difficult lenses to use in visual effects work, because an anamorphic lens has two entrance pupils, one in the vertical domain and one in the horizontal domain. So it has always traditionally been hard to map what's happening inside an anamorphic lens into a virtual world, whether it's on an LED wall in VR or if it's in visual effects. The visual effects workflow unwarps the lens, does the compositing work, and then rewarps the image back to the original shape. And this unwarping has always been inaccurate, let's say, but in anamorphic lenses, it has always been wildly inaccurate, making it very difficult to do convincing composites from anamorphic images. But now, using empirically measured metadata in the form of third-order polynomials in JSON files, we now have the capability to be extremely accurate in undistorting and changing the shading, correcting for shading in lenses, and then reapplying that distortion and reapplying that shading to finished composites. So this is, in my opinion, breakthrough work. And Nuke, the Foundry's big compositing software platform, in a soon-to-be released iteration, will actually have a drop-down pane for applying these JSON files automatically inside Nuke. So when we get to that point, we don't need to shoot grid charts for CG work if we have these JSON files. And anything that you can automate in our business saves time, and anything that saves time saves the producers money, and they like that. So this automation is beginning to work, and people are beginning to understand it and pay attention to it. Okay.
Thank you. And now, Comer, please, could you start? You're mute. You're mute.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yeah, yes.
It works. Hi, everyone. So high frame rates is a subject that has been active in the technical committee for a lot of years. It started in from 2006 onwards. It has been brought into the SMPTE. And in 2009, additional frame rates of 60 frames per second, 50 frames, 30 frames, and 25 frames were added to the international standard of projection in the theater projection. And when something is added to a standard, it takes a while before it is implemented in the equipment. It took about 10 years, and that's where we are now. So it's something that you cinematographers actually can use, that we can do something with. However, it's important to explain that a common misunderstanding is that the primary goals are not temporal resolution nor smoothness of movement or avoidance of strobing, these all are true, but are actually secondary but beneficial side effects, but which are which are nice. But the real goal is to advance spatial resolution, because as any photographer knows, at a 50th of a second of exposure, you cannot have any sharpness in anything that moves. And as we are cinematographers, I'm making moving pictures. If we want to have real resolution in high resolution in moving pictures, we need short exposure times. And at 24 or 20 frames per second, short exposure times cannot be used, because then we get strobing. It reveals that 25 frames per second is not enough to portray movement. And this is why from 50 or 50 frames per second onwards, we can use any exposure time we want. And that brings me to goal number 2, which is to bring back to the cinematographer the parameter of the exposure time per frame, which is an important artistic parameter any still photographer will confirm to you, but has been inaccessible to us cinematographers. Once the camera and the projector are running at 50 or 60 frames per second, this becomes accessible. We are running tests now in collaboration with the footage that has been offered to us by Stefan Grandinetti and Aaron Cooder, who is a former student of Stefan, which is processed by Tim Mentler, who's making by post processing different virtual shutter angles of a scene. And this is very interesting. It not only changes the atmosphere of a scene, it also allows to shift attention from the background to the foreground without using the focus of the lens. So if anybody is interested in participating or seeing those tests, please let us know. If there's questions about these issues, please don't hesitate. Email at kommer@imago.org.
Okay, now it's time for Roberto to speak about relationship with CML. Could you change? So, Roberto, it's your turn.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm going to read this so I don't forget anything. Cinematography list is a cinematography mailing list, which is a worldwide respected group of filmmakers, cinematographers, gaffers, ACs, colorists, grips, VFX, basically everybody in the industry has joined forces with IMAGO to share all of our resources, our forums, as well as our years of comprehensive testing of cameras, lighting, and lenses. Started by Jeff Boyle many years there. A large database of camera and lens and lighting tests that go back many years that are accessible to all. By having cross-website links with IMAGO, all of those who visit the IMAGO website can access everything that CML has to offer, and vice versa. The cinematography mailing list website is actually cinematography.net. We're planning to establish testing norms, as Dave mentioned earlier, so that all of our different organizations are using the same baseline to test cameras, lights, and lenses, so that you can truly compare apples to apples instead of the way tests are being done today. And then we can go forward and test CineGear together, sharing both data and financial resources with IMAGO. And hopefully we will have a joint meeting at Kameramaj in 2022 in Torun, Poland this November. I'm in talks right now with Marek and Kazik to organize that CML and IMAGO can have a seminar meeting, some kind of presentation together, so that we can all meet in person and share our resources and our ideas and our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto and Dave. What time is it in LA?
7:20 a.m.
Thank you. Thank you. So now it's time for Dirk to speak, if you're still there. Dirk Meyer, are you still there? So Dirk is, okay. So please, could you speak about your role and what you've done in the last years? We're very happy having you on board.
Well, I have to mention, you're catching me in a grading suite right now, where I'm grading on an HDR show. So there might be a little noise in the background. I've been involved in 2 working groups within the German Society of Cinematographers that deal with high dynamic range and digitization. In both, it was the attempt mostly to get together a piece of paper and also, let's say, recommendations on how to collaborate with the institutions, with production companies, to get the best and most out of HDR. We had digitizing, like restoring or doing restoration work on previous work of cinematographers, because we had a little bit of bad experiences with broadcast stations on both topics. But after about 2.5 years of working there, I can actually confirm that we did achieve a little bit of an improvement, and the situation has relaxed. But the working groups continue to kind of join forces, and that's what I also want to do within IMAGO a bit more, to talk with peers from other countries what the situation is actually in their respective markets. Thank you.
We want to add that we have the opportunity in this. Could you go back to the former? Thank you. We have a lot of new members. We are very important in our groups. We will host gaffers, grips, rental houses, all, let's say, patient industry players. This is really a point where we want to have the maximum of people who want to collaborate with us. It's about cinematography, but it's about filmmaking. So we need the expertise from a lot of members. That's why we have first ACs. We have several now colorists. It's very important for us to have their point of view. And we cannot consider working on cinematography without speaking about the workflow and the role of the post-production. So it's, for us, a great point and a great asset having all people like Charles, like Daniel, Dirk, and Marieke with first ACs. So this is really important. So I hope now that we will have the chance to speak with Joe Dunton, because I saw that he put a special tie with many colors. Joe, do you hear us? Can you speak?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so could you explain us about the colors of your ties?
Yeah, this is, if you had a new 4-color camera, you would actually see all these nice colors properly and correctly.
Okay, so do you want to add more things regarding the work you want to do on the 4th color?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, can I give you, how long have I got? How long have I got? A couple of minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to go back over the past for some people, because if you can imagine, I started on 405 line black and white television, and the lens sizes at that time were like 2¼ square lenses. They were 4-inch image orthographic cameras. So I've gone from a picture that was generated with a lens that's anyway, I've gone through all of that. I helped make the video system and that side of it. I just wanted to say that what we've got at the moment is cameras that really were designed as electronic cameras, where the first film cameras were designed for film by, say, Kodak or whoever the gang was, but they designed it to see what we could see the same in reality. So that they wanted their recording system to see the same as what your eyes would see when you looked at a scene. Now, what happens now, in my opinion, we go to an electronic system, and once it hits the electronics, you start to make a different feeling. It's a different mixture. So I'm saying, let's make a camera now with an extra color in the system, because you wouldn't give an artist 3 colors of paint to work with. You give him to give him 4 colors is better, and we get more renditions of colors. We're doing experiments at the moment with a 3D rig, which we're showing you there, with a black and white with a yellow filter in it to give me an extra channel of color. And I'm hoping we might be able to lose one of the greens out of the chip block. We might be able to lose one of the greens in the chip block and make that a yellow. So it wouldn't be a big reinstitution of a system. because we have the sensitivity now. Before, when you had 2 green blocks, it was to build up the sensitivity
Thanks to
the main deal. But anyway, so the idea is to start a new camera that would have 4 colors in it. It would have a moving chip that would actually make the light land on a different cell of the chip cell every frame. So it becomes like grain then. In a film camera, you put a piece of film in, it's got random grain, you land on that piece of film, the next piece of film has got more random grain. So consequently, we get the feeling of film, the emotion of film, because we've got this, every frame is a different set of pixel, a different set of grain every frame. So I'd like to try and generate that in an electronic camera. Also, what the Storaro uses is to move the focal depth plane backwards and forwards electronically. So we can now start to find sweet spots on lenses, change the focus on the back focus electronically. So it's a camera that will be made for the cinema. Not, we'll work on television, but it's made for the cinema. But that's quickly, and I'm sorry I was late or whatever happened. If there's any questions, I can answer questions later or whatever you want.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. So now we want to thank Cinematography World, and first we want to thank John Daly, BSc, who organized with Robert, with Ellie, all this fantastic event, and special thanks to Ron Prince, of course, editor-in-chief of CW Magazine. Alan Lone, who is a special consultant, and Claire Sanders, who did a magnific job to organize this meeting. So now we can speak maybe a little bit about intuition, because this was the goal of this meeting. So we know that it was a lot of things to share with you. We have many other partners, many other people who work on different topics. We cannot share all of things in 1 hour, but we want to open the discussion. So if you have questions, if you want to speak about why we are speaking about intuition, why, for example, Joe is speaking about the way the colors affect the brain. And we have here with Daniel, certainly one of the most talented tutorials made by him to explain the role of the color and the luminance in the way we are dealing with the image. So I recommend you to go on YouTube and to see all the tutorials made by Daniel. It will explain you a lot of things, and why, for example, we still have debate and discussions between us about the role of different colors to affect the thing. You have a special thing to say about colors, because David, could you speak us about research in US about 6 colors? Dave?
Yes, there is research underway in Waco, Texas at Baylor University to build a 6-color display system. That is a system that shows you full bandwidth of red, green, blue, yellow, cyan, and magenta. And this was partly spurred by NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, because astronauts would go up to the International Space Station with cameras and shoot on spacewalks and out the windows, and they would come back and see those images color corrected in a color suite, and uniformly to a person, everyone's comment was always the same. This does not look like what I saw when I was in space. And they couldn't get there from the original images they had in their cameras, because the cameras were not capable of recording all of the colors that they could see. So this led the university to undertake a display system. But I think in order for the plan to work, there needs to be a camera that can provide all of those colors as well. So I'm interested in working with Joe and working with whomever to raise money to build a multispectral motion picture camera solution.
Fantastic. Before starting the Q&A, just to mention that we didn't have time to speak about the Lighting Council. John Christian Rosenlund has made fantastic tests, and also we made recently some tests with German associations, and there is a lot of discussion to have on LEDs lighting. But we can start now to have Q&A if you're okay. Is there special questions on the role of the ITC?
Philippe, may I just add one thing?
Yeah.
It's Roberto. Yes, I realized I neglected to say that the CML has every week a live Zoom meeting that everyone is welcome to join, where we have discussions on all various topics, and anybody can suggest a topic also. And it's held every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Los Angeles Pacific time. And we have people from all over the world, people from everywhere, in all different walks of the motion picture imaging industry join. So please, everybody is welcome to join cinematography.net. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you, Roberto.
So let me broke the ice, yeah. So and try to challenge you a bit, yeah. So as I'm coming from the 3D world, and spending the last 30 years in filming, my biggest challenge is connect the, I would say, 2D world with the 3D world. And as you're talking again about the pixel, not the voxel, and 3D space, and what is approaching as that was at least my challenge is mixing and recording actually a world in 3D, meaning that what is coming out, and we already developed some holographic displays, is recording not the pixel in 2D dimension and then the scene in 3D dimension. And that's something which maybe you should also include partially in all what Daniel is doing, because we have anyhow mixing today Unreal Engine and 3D world from animation with capturing with the camera, and still the camera is capturing in 2D. We have some choice capturing in 3D, but this 3D has still has a problem with machine power on the other side, one side, and we should think, I think that we capture world in 3D in colors. So that's something which I would like to challenge, that you go in that direction, because that's what I see in the last 30 years, but machines are going up and we are capturing slowly, but we are still not there. But let's try to define the future a little bit on that way, because that's where we are going. That's somehow it's how I see it myself. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, a very good point. I think this is a general trend. And we can definitely, I mean, we needed to first capture this status quo thing, but I mean, the whole subject of intrinsic video is, I think, the overall research area where you can, where you capture more than just a projection of the 2D world, or there are algorithms that try to recalculate it from a 2D image. There's a lot of research going on there, and definitely that's on the scope. Yeah.
May I
Can I step in?
may I take a stab at this one?
And I'll follow.
So 5 years ago, I shot a test film for Litro Cinema, who built a gigantic light field camera that was variable in length from 7 feet to 11 feet, weighed 1,000 pounds, and had an objective that was about 1.5 feet in diameter. And we showed the film at NAB, and it was, we showed it in a 500-seat room, and we got in trouble with the fire marshals because there were 700 people in the room. And it was a very popular session, and it showed precisely that, capturing depth in color images. And as a result, partly as a result of that film, the company Litro was bought and subsumed into Google. And what they have done with it, no one knows. I have no idea. But I know that what you're asking can be done, and I know that it can be done in a number of ways. And I am still speaking to a number of camera companies about doing precisely what you're saying. I agree, eventually we should be able to easily capture RGBZ. In addition to, you know, the colors of our spectrum, we need per pixel or per photosite depth from entrance pupil. And I think that's fairly straightforward to do. I think the problem is, if you are familiar with the bell curve of adoption in technology, we are still on the upslope. And right now we are in what they call the chasm of adoption. That is, an idea comes forth and gets presented and proven. And then the rest of the world has to grok that. They have to understand what it is, and they have to make it their own, and they have to understand the value of it. And then you climb out of the chasm and you proceed up the adoption curve. And I don't think we're climbing out of the chasm yet, but I have hope for the next couple of years.
Joe, you want to say something?
Yeah, please. Can you hear me? Yes, sorry. It's Joe here. Early on in the film life, the way I see it is that if the way 70mm came about, shooting in 70mm and projecting it in 70mm on a curved screen, it comes very close to reality without getting too complicated with 3D effects. It's more comfortable to watch a big screen with really quite high quality color and quite high resolution. It gives you more a feeling of that, I think. And I think with more, as I say, going back to more colors and more, you know, more movement of the pixel images, it's possible to make entertainment. We're into entertainment and not scientific recording exactly what you see, which is what I just said I would like to see, but I'm still in the entertainment business. And with the 10 channels of sound now with IMAX and all of that, we should make beautiful pictures at the moment. Sorry, I hope that makes sense, but.
Yeah, I have to say from my side that 3D imaging is basically as old as this world. And basically it was in a way before even the kind of any photographic imaging, the effect of 3D was found by people in prehistoric time. And it's always like that. It's never disappearing. It's just ups and downs. Today I got fantastic short conversation with Sebastian Kramer, who is amazing cinematographer, and his inventions, I'm still admiring his Skater Mini and everything what he does in 3D world. He was, at least he is the only one whom I heard about who was able to make macro shots in 3D. And today he told me that he designed a copter gimbal drone for 3D. So we never know when the balance and the overall volume of new developments will hit the imagination. And basically every time 3D was going down, first of all, because of the very poor quality of 3D in presentation in film theaters. Because actually for many different technologies, if you want to get a proper 3D, you have to make a proper grading for each screen size and projection hole size. And it was never done. The stereopsis was more or less a standard, ghosting backgrounds and this and that. And it's all creating headaches. It's creating the overload of the brain. With recent technologies and developments, the size of the cameras is getting smaller and smaller. The side-by-side subject with the size of the lenses soon will be not an issue anymore. And for us, it was very important. And the moment when the overall volume of those developments will be ready for the creative revolution, and then adding attention and offering much better feeling of 3D when it's really needed. Thank you.
Dave,
Sorry.
please,
So,
Dave was first. Dave was first. Sorry, Joe.
I think the questioner was asking more about volumetric capture and actually capturing objects as 3D objects around which you can synthesize non-existent camera perspectives. Roberto, feel free to chime in on this, because we did this, 15 years ago on Quantum of Solace, where we did a volumetric capture of Daniel Craig and Olga Kurylenko in a freefall wind tunnel in Bedfordshire. And we created synthetic characters of them, which we could then create new camera perspectives that didn't exist. And I would invite Roberto to say something about this, but this is quite a long time ago that we were doing this.
Can I have a quick word with comma?
Joe,
Quick,
you were first.
yeah, quickly with comma. Is there any chance that we can actually shoot variable speed with the camera and vary the speed of the projector when we do the projection to the same rate as the camera changing speed? We change the projector speed just in the movie, so we can go for 4 frames, shoot at 4 frames, and then project at 4 frames in one movie at the time, comma.
That is not likely to be anytime soon, because we just implemented high frame rates in the projectors, and the projection and distribution industry expects us to use that before we ask for anything more. So now that the high frame rates are available in the cinema, they expect us to use that before we ask anything more, and I think that sounds reasonable. So but on the other hand, now that we have access to 60 frames, which is available in 98% of cinemas today, an effect which you described can be created very closely, because when we transform frame rates in post-production, it doesn't work well, because at this time it's difficult because the frame rate of the projector is so low. Once you have a lot of pixels, you can resize more easily than when you have a little bit of pixels. With frames, it's the same thing. When you have a projector running at 60 frames, you can shoot a scene just like you propose, and have a post-production system rendering it in a way that it looks like the projector changing speed while it's running. Actually, the projector will run at a fixed speed of 60 frames per second or even higher, because we already have about half of the cinemas in the world that can go up to 120. But if you want to go in all the cinemas, it's 60 the limit. But those effects can be created. If they would become popular and people would actually use that, then I think it's possible to convince the projector manufacturers to actually incorporate a possibility like you described.
And comma, do the projectors still run at 17.5 for silent movies?
No, but when you you can run silent movies pretty genuine at not 17.5, but there is a standard for archive movies which allows 1 frame per second steps from 16 up to 20 to 25.
Right.
But it's not very widely implemented. It's implemented in a few film museums. However, when you run a projector at 60, you can make 16 frames per second work, because it's you can recalculate more easily without too much of a disturbance. When you run a projector at 48, you can actually do 12, and there's a lot of combinations. You can do 15 by running the projector at 30. So there are quite a few possibilities.
But have we not had the problem before when we've upped the frame rate, the pictures don't look so real as a 24 frame picture?
No, the higher the frame rate goes, the realer it looks.
Yeah, but it becomes too real.
Well, then we shouldn't put more than 3 colors in the camera either, because then it would look too real.
One all.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we want to know if there's other questions in the,
That's
in
how
the
it's
audience,
happening every
because
time at the meeting.
if we don't stop them, we will be there till tomorrow. So thank you very much. Is there other questions from the audience? Is there specific things that you want to know? We have to say that we are missing cinematographers. We are missing, of course, women. We have 6 women in the as a full member, but we are missing also cinematographers from the documentary style, because it's very important. We have Ed Lackman. We have the pleasure to work on many different style of shootings. We have the pleasure to have Claudia from Schneider here, because we have very good relationship with manufacturers, and especially on the lens manufacturers, because of course we are deeply concerned by lenses. And I don't know if you want to say something else, Daniel, about your work regarding brain and acquisition. And I think it's important that you share that, because everybody should know your tutorials.
Yeah, I think we will link link them in the on the ITC website. So if you regularly go to the ITC website, then we will link that. There's a lot to say about color and images in general. So
I think what you did on optical illusions changed the life of many cinematographers regarding their way to speak about how it affects the audience, how we are depending on all these illusions. So thank you very much, Daniel, for this work, because it's a lot of tutorials that we want to share. On the ITC website, on IMAGO website, you will find tests on LEDs. You will find tests from Alfonso Parra cameras. You will find tests on the new, I think, way to measure the LED, and we will have in the next week's meetings for the SSI, for the way to measure LED, because actually we saw that gaffers, cinematographers, and even manufacturers are missing the right tools to measure LED. Also, what we want to say is that if we're speaking about green light, we are thinking that LEDs are not the only solution, because extracting all the things to create these tools are very demanding in terms of ecological issues. So we try to be informed, to share, but we need to learn. So we know that we don't know, which is our strength. So please join ITC. Please come. We are at your disposal, and we have a bunch of people who are open-minded.
I have to say that even today we got a fantastic meeting with a gentleman who designed a very good app. And it's, in my mind, it's very useful. And I think soon we will introduce it as kind of one of the channels of information of ITC. So it's all growing. It's all about communication. It's all about gathering information together, sharing it, sharing opinions, and we are very happy to be in there.
But I want to ask Ron Prince to stand up, please, and to thank John Daly and Ellie. Could you raise your hand, Ellie and Robert? Thank you very much for all your work, and our friend, thank you very much. We're really happy to be pleased to be invited, and thank you very much for all your work and efforts. Thank you.
Can I thank John Daly as well on behalf of the BSC?
We cannot stop you, Joe. Yes.
I'd just like to thank John for all his work on the London show and this show, because it's hard work. It's not easy. It's not easy, and I've been there in thought with him. So, but I'm there if he ever needs me. I've got 2 quick ones for you. 2 quick ones. Working on a new carbon arc lamp for the future, because it's still the best quality of light. And secondly, low resolution lenses that are 1K lenses to give you something different to look at. So I've got other things going at the moment, and a new dolly. So I'm still out there.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.